everyone, it's Anita, and today's video is about the books I read in 2021. For this year I thought I would do it a bit differently. Recently I imported my Goodreads data onto storygraph. Goodreads is an app where you can track books, and storygraph is also an app where you can track books. However, they have some interesting features that Goodreads doesn't have. And you can also get some stats on your reading and like the books you read, stuff like that. So I really like that aspect, and so I think I'm going to review the books or tell you about the books I read using that data I got from Storygraph. My Goodreads is linked down below. I also try to link my Storygraph profile in case you want to follow me. So yeah, my name is Tomanita, like my channel name. Now let's go to my stats for this year. So first of all, I read 30 books in 2021. I also read the same amount of books in 2020. I think it's a good number of books, so I'm keeping that goal for this year as well. I think it's a good amount of books for me personally. And I think I'm going to review the books I read, not in a chronological order, but by the stars I gave them. So here you can see that my average rating was 4.03 stars. I should say that on Goodreads you can only give full stars. Here on Storygraph you can give half and even quarter stars. I think next year my review is going to be a bit more detailed. Let's start with the 1 star. I only give one book 1 star, and that one was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I don't know. I think this one got turned into a TV show, and a lot of people said that this book had a great plot twist. I heard a lot of good things about this book, and you know, this is why I have trust issues, because this book was trash and I apparently can't trust anyone's opinion of books, or I don't know what else in life. So this book is, well, first of all, you call that a plot twist? I'm sorry, no, absolutely no. That it was so predictable. Well, anyway. Second, maybe it's just me, but this book is young adult novel, and I just can't read YA. I think it's so cringy, and this book, yeah, it was just too cringy for me. The dialogues, the characters, it's not for me. And I'm sure there are some YA books that are better than this, so I'm sorry if that's your favorite genre. Yeah, it's just not for me. So that was the, I guess, worst book I read in 2021. Then we have a couple of 3-star reviews. Alright, the first book on here, the first book I gave 3 stars was Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Sorry. My friend Laura actually gifted me this book. We read it for our podcast. We have a podcast called Skorpion und Jungfrau. It's in Swiss German, so if you understand Swiss German, check us out. So we talk about books, and this was her pick. 3 stars is I didn't hate it, but I don't know if I would recommend it to other people. That's 3 stars, you know. I think it's also funny because Adele I don't know when that was, posted on her Instagram that she read this book and that this book changed her life. I think it really depends on what problems you have. I personally think that yeah, it really depends on where you live, what kind of person you are, you know, how privileged you already are. I liked some aspects of this book, like where she talks about religion. I like that. All in all, I don't want anyone to think that, oh, if you read this, like you're going to solve your problems, your life's going to change, whatever. That's probably not going to be the case. I mean, if it is, good for you. In general, if you like a book, if a book adds value to your life, if it helped you, then that's amazing. Like, don't let anyone tell you that it's rubbish to think that or whatever. That's just my opinion, and I just don't want anyone to think or, you know, get their hopes up and buy this book and think like, oh yeah, that's going to solve everything, because it's not. I just don't think that she's that authentic. I think some of her conversations, like the conversations she has or supposedly had with her kids, I don't know, and I just don't like people that need to emphasize how empathetic they are. Like it's a bit of a red flag to me. And my friend Laura, she really likes this author and this book, so it's always funny when I have to talk about it or someone mentions it, because I know that we just disagree on this, and that's fine. Okay, the next book is If on a Winter Night's a Traveler by Italo Calvino. I read it in English. I think the original is in Italian. This one, I know it's supposed to be clever, and some parts of it are clever, but I just didn't enjoy it that much. That's honestly it. Like, I can see why a lot of people like this. It's basically a novel in a novel in a novel in a novel, you know. Another book that got 3 stars is Surrounded by Idiots, The 4 Types of Human Behavior and How to Effectively Communicate with Each Other in Business by Thomas Erikson. So, like, he doesn't have a background in psychology, and he kind of just says you can divide people into 4 groups. Of course, no one's a perfect red, blue, yellow or green. Like these are the 4 types, and he gives examples of people that are half this, half that. But in general, I think that science, I think that's a bit outdated, and you know, I don't know, like some parts of it were funny, some like made you think that, oh yeah, of course, like people communicate differently, and it just reminded me to keep that in mind when I talk to people, when I listen to people. People are different, like that's the takeaway from this. And you know, some of this is okay, but I think that the author is a bit too full of himself. Another book that I gave 3 stars to was L'être personne by Montesquieu. These are some extraits choisis, so they're not all of them. I think the English translation is Persian Letters. Like, this is an epistolary novel, so it's comprised of letters, which I generally really like. And this was actually the last book I read in 2021. So if you're interested in Montesquieu, in his philosophy, that might be like a fun approach. It's sort of a commentary on the French society, but in a sneaky way, because he disguises it sort of by these 2 Persians that write letters, and they go to Europe and like comment on what they see in France, stuff like that. So it's a bit sneaky, a sneaky criticism of the French society, and you just get a bit of an insight into his mind. I wouldn't say you need to read this, you know. I also gave 3 stars to a Serbian book I read. I read 2 books that were in Serbian in 2021, and this one's Tamo Ovde by Maja Lalević-Piščević. I just stumbled upon this because a YouTuber like mentioned it once, and I was just looking for random books I could read. This one's sort of like a diary of hers. Like, she went to New York for 1 year to work there, and these were just her thoughts, like her reflections on, okay, well, her home in Serbia, and like sort of like a comparison to the US, and like where's, you know, her actual home. I don't know, like it was okay, but there were some boring aspects of it, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Okay, then we have another French book that only received 3 stars, I'm sorry, and that one's Paul et Virginie by Jacques-Henri Bernardin de Saint-Pierre. And first of all, I mean, these covers are really nice, but it doesn't really matter. I appreciate the story. Like, the story is like, oh, these 2 children grew up on an island, like kind of removed from French society, and they were really happy and whatever, but then like a relative of the girl convinces her or makes her go to France, sort of like playing on the whole society is corrupt, I don't know, like in nature, you know, people are happy and good and whatever, you know. I guess it kind of plays on that whole Kling. Also 3 stars go to On Palestine by Ijeawele and Noam Chomsky. I thought the idea was interesting. So they had those 2 authors, Ijeawele and Noam Chomsky, sort of discuss Palestine. The first part was sort of like a history review, and then it was like a discussion between those 2 scholars. Some parts are interesting, some parts are repetitive. It's quite a short book, so yeah, if you're interested on a topic, might be interesting. And a last 3-star book, that was like a random book I read, An Astrological Guide for Broken Hearts by Sylvia Zucca. There's a Netflix TV show, like an adaptation of the book, and I watched I guess first season, or like the episodes that are out. The series is better than the book, first of all. And the book was alright, a bit problematic here and there, but like this book, I mean, okay, published in 2015, but yeah, there still like some parts are a bit, yeah, all in all, like it's funny rom-com type of novel, and it also has to do with a lot to do with astrology, and I think astrology is well, it's interesting, it's funny. Then let's move on to the 4-star books. I gave 4 stars to 9 books. The first one is Come As You Are, The Surprising New Science That Will Transform Your Sex Life by Emily Nagoski. This was also a suggestion by my friend Laura for a podcast. And this is, like it says, a non-fiction, feminism, gender, science, self-help type of book. And I thought it was quite insightful. Hopefully some of this is quite obvious, but I can see why it's not, why someone had to actually write about it. And she does a good job in explaining the science behind, yeah, everything surrounding sex. So I think she did a good job. I can see why it's under the feminism category. One of the main messages she gives is that you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you, because a lot of times like people are made to think that there's something wrong with them because they're not like other people, they're not like the people they see in movies, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's one of her, that's one of the takeaways. Okay, the next one is Ein perfekter Freund by Martin Sutter. And that's a Swiss author, and like this was published in 2002, and yeah, you can tell by the way that he describes people, which it's just well, unfortunate, let me just say that. Like a quick description is, guy wakes up in a hospital, he has amnesia, he can't remember the last 5 weeks, but like he knows or suspects that he has gotten himself into something shady, and tries to reconstruct what has happened. Then L'étranger by Albert Camus. This one, I think, yeah, it's a classic. The main character is just so random, I don't know. Begins with him attending his mother's funeral, and then he gets himself into like a bit of a drama, kills a guy for no good reason. Then we have 2 books that are in German. One of them is QualityLand by Marc-Uwe Kling. This is a dystopian, this is a funny dystopian novel. Then we have Herkunft by Saša Stanišić. So he fled with his mom from Bosnia to Germany during the war in Bosnia. This book is partially about his new life in Germany, about Bosnia, about the also the conflict. There's some parts in this book that are super funny, but then he goes back to something that happened during the war, or about his grandma's illness. Like he has this ability to switch from like one emotion to the other, and I think it's also interesting how he compares the war, the situation with the refugees from the Bosnian War, to the current refugee crisis. Like how it was for him to go to school in a completely foreign country where he was a refugee foreigner. That was fun and sad to read at the same time, if that makes sense, but yeah. And okay, so the next 4-star, I guess, I gave to my mom's favorite book, I guess, or at least that's by her, it's her favorite author. Ranjeni Oro by Mirza Jakovljević, or also known as Miriam. Yeah, fictional historical romance, describes it really well. So the author, Miriam, is also described as like the Serbian Jane Austen, basically. I mean, the main difference is that this happens between World War I and II. I'm pretty sure all her novels were set during that time. And the next book that I got 4 stars is Who Rules the World by Noam Chomsky. By the way, if you don't know who Noam Chomsky is, he is quite a famous leftist scholar, a critic of US foreign policy. So this book's more of a collection of different chapters or essays from other books combined into this book, and you can tell because some of it is repetitive. Also, like the way he argues sometimes, I just didn't really like that. It comes across as whataboutism, like the Russians did that and the world was outraged, but the US did the same thing, no one said anything. Yeah, sure, it's good to point out the hypocrisy, but at the same time, I just think you could probably phrase it a bit better. And also 4 stars got this book, An Introduction to Green Criminology and Environmental Justice by Agnes Nurse. This is a textbook, and I thought it was a good intro to this topic. And the last book that got 4 stars was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And this was different. This is about a woman. She's quite happy with her job. She works at a convenience store, and she's worked there for years. And she's completely happy. She lives alone. She's not in a relationship. She doesn't feel the need to be in one. But her friends, her family, they all pressure her to find another job, to find someone. So she tries so hard to fit into into society, and it's quite interesting to read it from her perspective. And I thought the writing style was also interesting, so I don't want to give too much away. And now let's go to the books I gave 5 stars to, essentially the books I guess I would recommend, or mostly recommend. Alright. Okay, so the first one on the list is Global Inequality, A New Approach for the Age of Globalization by Branko Milanovic. So this one is informative. It's definitely the word I would use. If you're not a fan of macroeconomics, I just need to warn you, because he talks a lot about the data. He talks a lot about how he got the data, and yeah, so that might be a bit boring. But you know, there are lots of graphs and notes if you're interested in learning more about it. Well, let me show you the contents. The rise of the global middle class and global plutocrats, inequality within countries, inequality among countries. I think this distinction that he makes is super important. Like, do you only look at the inequality within a country, or also do you also compare it across or among countries? Then he has a chapter on global inequality in this century and the next. That was an excellent chapter. And so the last chapter was What Next, where he gives 10 short reflections on the future of income inequality and globalization. I think it's probably interesting to people that are interested in income inequality and like to look at data, like to talk about macroeconomics. But yeah, so 5 stars for this book. Next, I want to talk about Women, Race and Class by Angela Davis. This is the first book I read in 2021. Here she gives a historic account about the women's rights movement in the US and how a lot of white feminists, how they were quite racist and classist. And I thought this is so interesting. I mean, sad really, but for example, they were so scared that Black men would get the right to vote before them. So they were really against Black men getting right to vote, instead of fighting for the right to vote for everyone, basically. So it's like, oh, I give us the right to it instead of them. How does that make sense? Like, I don't know, it's bizarre. It's bizarre, and I think, yeah, just the way that she describes it and just the historic events that took place. Yeah, I think that's, if you're into, as anyone should that's into feminism, should also be into intersectional feminism. So if you're interested in that topic, definitely read that book. I'm going to combine the next 4 books together because they're from the same like book series. They're just 4 books. It's sort of funny leftist book series criticizing society, sort of referencing different theories and philosophies in a really funny way. Yeah, he does that quite well. It's about a guy that lives with a kangaroo. The kangaroo is a communist. I guess, yeah, I think, yeah, that sums it up quite well. Then I read and gave 5 stars to Capitalist Realism, Is There No Alternative by Mark Fisher. And the reason why I even read this book was that the US Congresswoman AOC, you know, the tax the rich situation where she went to the Met Gala and wore a white dress that said tax the rich in the back. And a lot of people criticized her for this, for different reasons really, and like someone put a quote by Mark Fisher next to the picture or on the picture. That quote said, I'm going to read this from the Wikipedia article. According to Fisher, capitalist realism has so captured public thought that the idea of anti-capitalism no longer acts as the antithesis to capitalism. Instead, it is deployed as a means for reinforcing capitalism. This is done through media, which aims to provide a safe means of consuming anti-capitalist ideas without actually challenging the system. And so I read this book for 2 reasons. First, I want to see if this AOC media situation was a case of capitalist realism, if you could describe this as capitalist realism. And I just thought, just by reading the quote, I thought, oh well, this sounds like an interesting concept, so let me read the book. It's quite a short book, but the author really didn't waste any paper. Like, every word is there for a reason. Like, it's short, but it's packed, you know what I mean? So you definitely have to think about what it's telling you. Yeah, some of it went kind of over my head. So I think the whole concept is interesting, that after the Cold War, like, a world without capitalism is so, you know, unbelievable. No one thinks that there is an alternative. So a lot of criticism or something that is against the system is not really challenging the system, it's sort of trying to reform it. And in that way, I would say the whole AOC tax-the-rich media idea is sort of capitalist realism in a sense that, yeah, it's not against capitalism. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a good example, because taxing the rich is not even anti-capitalist. It's like he says, just living in a capitalist society or trying to improve a capitalist society, not trying to challenge like the actual capitalism. So I think a better example is just people saying like on the internet that, oh, well, capitalism, or oh, capitalism sucks, and not doing anything about it. Like, I think that's a better example of capitalist realism than her dress, because I also don't think that she is anti-capitalist. Her ideas are quite moderate, like from a European perspective. Then 5 stars also go to Les Jeux sont faits by Jean-Paul Sartre. I like the concept. I like this is the first of his books that I read, and I kind of like his ideas, his philosophy. So the plot is basically these 2 people, they die, they're in the afterlife, they meet there, they kind of realize like, oh yeah, they're attracted to each other, whatever. And then it turns out, oh, there was a mistake, they were actually supposed to be soulmates in their lifetime. And so there's an exception, I guess, in afterlife, like if you meet your soulmate, then you get a second chance, like you get 24 hours in the real world to fall in love, to actually really fall in love. And if you manage to do that, you can stay alive, and if you don't, well, then you have to go back to the afterlife. And I think that concept is really interesting, and yeah, 5 stars, 5 stars. Know My Name by Chanel Miller, 5 stars, hands down. It's her memoir. She was sexually assaulted on the Stanford campus by Brock Turner. I think that case is quite famous, at least in the US. And just the way the case was treated, and that's just horrendous. And she was anonymous for the longest time. And I recommend this book to anyone who thinks that it's easy to go through this, this legal process, who has to report sexual assault and has to deal with the police and stuff like that. Anyone who thinks that that's easy should definitely read this memoir. Another 5-star book, Primitivo by Pedro Lenz. It's in Swiss German, and it's about this guy. He's an apprentice, and like where he does his apprenticeship, one man, he was in an accident and died, and everyone called him Primitivo. He was originally from Spain, and so this young guy, he kind of tells the story of this man, and well, some of the aspects are sad, some are funny. Just the fact that it's written in Swiss German honestly makes it funny. I also gave 5 stars to Gott by Ferdinand von Schirach. God means God, and so Ferdinand von Schirach used to be a lawyer in Germany. I just really like his books. I'm pretty sure I read most of his books, and they're all quite philosophical. Yeah, some have also like legal aspects. This book is actually a play where they debate or discuss assisted suicide. Just well written, interesting arguments, and you know, it's one of those philosophical debates like who has the right to decide when someone can end their life. And another ebook was Dear Ijeawele, a Feminist Manifesto and 15 Suggestions by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. A short book. I thought her suggestions were interesting. Yeah, good ideas. Probably not applicable to every situation. I hope I covered all of them. Something I wanted to show you from the stats was also, you can see the moods, like the biggest mood I was in, I guess, was reflective, then informative, challenging. So you can also click on it and see what books belong to that. The pace, I mostly read medium paced books. Korea was slow paced, 21% was fast paced, 60% of the books I read had less than 300 pages, 40% had between 300 and 499 pages, about half was fiction, the other non-fiction. My top genres were politics, feminism, self-help, philosophy, literary, contemporary. I guess I would have to count all of them. But yeah, politics, I can see why. Yeah, definitely, that's my favorite genre. Oh, that's not accurate, I have to change that. I think more than 10% were digital. But yeah, I think you can select that. Most read authors, yeah, I usually read different authors, so that, yeah, 2 of them were quite prominent this year. Number of books and pages. So 30 books, they say that's, I guess this depends on the edition, but that's 7,899 pages. I read a lot in January and in December. The camera stopped recording, but I was done anyway. You already saw the star review, so that's fine. Let me know what books you read last year, what your goals are this year, or just, you know, anything you want to talk about, that's fine. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next video. Bye!